Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of LetsChat GP, the podcast where we share everything about living in Grande Prairie. I'm your host Demar, and today I'm joined by a fantastic person. We'll get into it afterwards, but before we go into it, let me just say that this podcast is brought to you with the kind support of TELUS STORYHIVE, and it's being filmed on Treaty 8 territory, land of the Beaver, Cree, Dene, and Métis people, the original caretakers of the land that we are on. Now let's get back to it, guys. Today, we are joined by a real estate professional, a former Rotary president, an immigrant, and somehow he managed to still become a lifelong resident of Grande Prairie. Yeah. He's a father, and most importantly, he's in the hot seat right now. I'm talking about no other than Taj Johnson. Taj,
thanks so much for having me, my man. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Taj is a real estate professional in the city of Grande Prairie, and he's going to share all his knowledge with you guys about the housing market, about himself, and all the things that you need to know if you're planning on buying a house or if you're planning on moving to Grande Prairie. Absolutely. How was your day today?
Today was good. It was a good day. Did a little bit of work, a little bit of play, a little bit of, parenting action. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
It was a good day.
So, the first question I usually like to ask my guests is, give me a quick background about yourself. Tell me about family, your background, what was your upbringing like? Just a little snippet.
Well, in a quick snippet, I was originally born in Dominica in the Caribbean. I lived there with my grandmother till I was 9 years old. Moved to Canada, Yellowknife of all places, when I was about 9. And then I lived in Yellowknife, went to school, made a lot of great lifelong friends there. And after a while, I decided I needed to make a change, and I decided to come to Grande Prairie. And Grande Prairie, I guess now has been home for the last 25 years. So
25 years. So what age did you move to Grande Prairie?
I moved here when I was 19. Yeah.
Was it a big difference from Yellowknife?
It was a small community at the time. It still is relatively a small community, but Yellowknife was smaller, and I'm a small town guy. So for me, like being in a small area, I love it. I love meeting people, knowing people, and it just seemed like a good fit.
Awesome. So you mentioned you came to Canada when you were 9 years old. Tell me a little bit about that experience. Like, what was that like as a 9-year-old kid coming into a new environment?
Man, I wouldn't say culture shock was a thing because I had cousins in Yellowknife who were a year older and a year younger than me.
Okay.
So they helped with that transition. But I do remember, like it was yesterday, coming from Toronto to Edmonton to Yellowknife, and each time we got off a plane, my mom would have like a thicker jacket because it was like Toronto was mild, and then you get to Edmonton and it was like maybe in the minuses, and then so she's like, no, you need this, and then by the time we got to Yellowknife, it was higher in the minuses.
Higher minuses. So as a 9-year-old kid, right? Of course, like you're gonna remember it like it's yesterday because of the experience. But like you were here with your mom or any siblings, any?
It was just my mom and my stepdad at the time, and I had 2 siblings that came after. But yeah, and we had aunts and cousins and, the family that was there. But my mom was up there to be their nanny. So she had some footing there and she knew the area really well. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
So in terms of like your upbringing now, like you're now in Canada as a 9-year-old kid in Yellowknife of all places. Let me reiterate that again. What was your upbringing like in that space? Was it much different than back in the DR?
In Dominica. So we tried, because it was a small community of us, we tried to keep things pretty, I wouldn't say we always try to stick with families. Family was super important to us. So those cousins that I had, they're still there to this day, but we every Sunday we had Sunday dinners. And that was one of the traditions that we started there right away was, just to stay connected. So
keep the culture.
Yeah, keep the culture. So we'd cook, we'd eat, we'd have drinks, music, because that's a big part of our culture. And yeah, like, so, when you're in the minus 40s in the middle of winter and it's dark all day and all night, you have to find some way to make things feel like home. So, and that was back before social media and camera phones and all these things, like video chats, to make a call back home, you have to call collect, you have to press 0, call collect, and talk to your family back home over the phone. So it was a whole different lifetime, a whole different ball game.
So you mentioned that you guys would get together and have Sunday dinners, right? What would the menu typically look like for a Dominica Sunday dinner? What does that typically would look like?
Wow. So we'd have like, some of the staples, like, you have your jerk chicken, somehow they would find oxtail up there. We'd have some fish because being on the Great Slave Lake, you'd always have like Arctic char or, some sort of fish. But yeah, we'd always do some stewed chicken or, rice and peas, like some of the staples.
I didn't know that rice and peas was like a Dominican thing too.
Yeah, we have that back home. Breadfruit, we'd, if somebody was down in Edmonton, they'd bring up a breadfruit, we'd roast it in the oven, So
that's awesome. Now you're 19. You're deciding to move from Yellowknife. Did you move straight to Grande Prairie from Yellowknife, or did you make a pit stop between?
No. Kind of around the advent of the internet, I was kind of doing some research, and they were talking about Grande Prairie growing and, the population in the oil and gas industry. And it was just before, the boom in the early 2000s. So, I just told myself, if I want to go somewhere, I'm not like a big city guy, I like open space, I like going to and from work in, a matter of minutes. So, for me, most of my friends that I graduated with, they were going to Vancouver and Red Deer and Calgary.
Bigger cities.
And I'm like, no, I'd rather be in a small town and get to learn and grow with the small town. So,
well, that's good. And as I said, you came as an immigrant, but you somehow still managed to be a lifelong resident of Grande Prairie. So I think not many people can say that.
Yeah.
But you're now in Grande Prairie at 19. What are your earliest memories of Grande Prairie? What was the tone like back then?
There's a lot of early memories that were fond to me that really stuck out to me. I remember buying my first vehicle at Hanson Ford when Hanson Ford was in where the farmers market is right now. So not a lot of people remember that. So I bought my first vehicle there. Lots of businesses change around. And one of the early memories, and the salesperson will laugh at this if he sees this, but I didn't know how to drive standard. And I found this really nice.
Disclaimer: I still don't know how to drive standard. So not bad.
I found this really nice 2-door sports cars, 20 years old. I'm like, I want to buy that car.
Yeah.
But I told the agent, I'm like, but I can't drive standard. He's like, that's my only inhibition.
Yeah.
So he says, Taj, jump in. So we go for a drive. He drives it out of town. He literally shows me how to drive standard in about 20 minutes. He says, now you drive it back to the dealership. And I'm like, okay. So I drove it back to the dealership. He's like, what do you think? I was like, all right, let's take it. So that was one of the early memories. And then I remember maybe it was like a few months later, we had hit winter and it's a 2-door sports car and we got like a major snowfall. And I remember just getting stuck everywhere and just people just coming out and just randomly just pushing you out. Just being like, guys would see you stuck and they'd be like, hey, you need a hand. And
was that something uncommon to you at the time?
I don't know if it was uncommon. It probably was, but I don't know. Maybe it was uncommon, but for me, it stuck out because I was like, these guys don't even know me and they're willing to help me.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of the it was the earliest memories I have of wow, this is actually a cool place to be. You could be stuck somewhere and people will take the time out of their day to help. To help you.
Actually, I have a similar story like that as well that I've shared where my first winter experience in Grande Prairie, I got not stuck in snow, but I got a flat tire.
Right.
And I was just making a quick run to a store, so I wasn't properly dressed for the weather.
Right.
And then when I got out of the store, I got like a flat tire, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I was there trying to change it, but it was like freezing cold, and then before you know it, there's like 2 cars just pulled up.
Yeah.
The rest is history. So that's actually a very common thing about Grande Prairie.
Yeah. And that was for me, like it felt like even though it was bigger than Yellowknife, it still felt small, small enough that people would still, take time out of their day to do that for you. So I feel like there was a small period in time where I was like, man, Grande Prairie, maybe I should live in Edmonton, maybe I should move.
Yeah.
And then like it was like situations like that was like, nah, this is not gonna happen anywhere else. So I'm
That's
just gonna
right.
stay.
So you've been here for 25 years. Certainly, a lot of things has changed over the years. What would you say is the biggest change that you have witnessed over the past 25 years?
I would say for me, like, I mean, being, being able to see Grande Prairie for the growth that it's encountered over the last 25 years. I always joke when I first came here, it was like the Staples building, and then on the right side of the highway was like the Staples building, and then the airport. Like that was it from that side. And now all that growth has happened, like Royal Oaks, Westgate. That wasn't those weren't communities at the time. So being able to see the growth of the city, able to see the multiculturalism in the city come through over the last few years, and without Grande Prairie losing its small town feel, I think that's super. That's one of the things that I noticed the most is that like Grande Prairie has grown so much, but then it hasn't lost its small feel.
That's awesome. Now, has the thought ever crossed your mind of leaving Grande Prairie?
No.
Never. Not even a little
I would
bit.
say in the early days, it did, like within the first 5 years, because I have family in like Florida and the States, and now in Edmonton.
Yeah.
And every time I thought about it, my answer was no. Yeah, I have my daughter now, and she's in the 6th grade, so there's some time left before she wants to maybe venture out.
So you have never gone to Edmonton or Calgary and get that nostalgic feeling like I could live here?
No.
No?
I mean, I love it because my family's there and it gives me a place to go and hang out for a weekend or a week or whatever. But Grande Prairie is still home.
That's awesome.
When I get back home, it's here.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this then. So somebody's watching this right now and they're thinking, Grande Prairie, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. Why should they move to Grande Prairie?
Grande Prairie has a lot of opportunities here, and I think one of the biggest things that I learned early on here is that it's very business oriented. So we had Small Business Week just recently here in Grande Prairie at the Chamber of Commerce, and there's a ton of small businesses. People love to support local. They love to support small. So there is a lot of opportunity to do really well here. Obviously giving back to the communities that you live in is also a benefit, as well. So, immersing yourself in the community is important. So I think being able to do that, you'll have a lot of opportunities for growth.
So would you say Grande Prairie is a place for someone to move to?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Are you talking from a place of bias, or are you speaking from a place of realistic or?
No,
factual?
I would say it's a great place to raise your family. It's a great place. It's small enough that it's not a hustle and bustle kind of city, but it's big enough that you still get the amenities of a big city.
Yeah.
Right? You still have the Costco's, you still have major shopping brands. You can still ship stuff in here at a relatively inexpensive cost. So I think like the education system, there's things we have to work on, like any city does. But I think, from me being here over the last 25 years, there would be no other place that I really want to raise a family or, look for work or, they always say Grande Prairie is that old adage is Grande Prairie is kind of recession proof. Yeah. So there'll always kind of be something going on in Grande Prairie. And
it leads perfect into my other question, which is how has the community's diversity changed over the years?
Like you'll see now, like, we have a Caribbean restaurant, like, we have Caribbean Connections, our group that we're part of. There's a lot of diversity happening. You look at the Canada Day Parade, and there's groups from all different ethnicities. that are here, and it's kind of a microcosm of Canada, where everybody kind of is that melting pot where everybody gets along, gets together, which is great to see, right? Like it's good to see cultures get together, and that's what makes a community better. Is when you have an influx of people, or you have different restaurants to eat at, different clothes to buy, those kinds of things. It helps bring up the community.
So what was it like back then? You came to Grande Prairie at 19. Obviously, would not have been as diverse as it is right now.
No.
Did you see anyone else who looked like you, or
no? There was a couple guys, but it was kind of almost like the Wild West, like it was kind of like the Wild West at that point. But there was at the start it was myself and maybe a handful of us that were in the Black community, and then a few years after, there was a Nigerian community that kind of populated, and they came to go to the college.
Okay.
So that became a thing, and so after that happened, a lot of them are still here, and then there's a third tier of the immigration sector that you guys are here with your company and your wife and your family and stuff, and so there's been a lot of that over the years. There's like kind of tiers of people coming and offering different sort of their skill set, right?
So how did you navigate the Grande Prairie space at that time, being a minority in every sense of the word? How did you navigate the space at that point in time? And I'm asking because oftentimes people think that diversity is really such a hard thing to deal with because they don't necessarily adapt as well as you have adapted. So how did you navigate that space, and what advice would you give to somebody else who's going through something similar?
Yeah, I guess my saving grace, I'll answer the first part of your question. My saving grace was that I moved here just shortly out of high school. So when I went to the college, GPRC at the time, most everybody, even though they didn't know, they maybe thought I was from they were like, hey, did you go to the comp, or did you go to St. Joe's? Like, where are you from? Like, so it was kind of that, it was kind of that thing. It was also at a time where, hip hop music and Black culture was starting to become a little bit more celebrated. So, it was kind of the in thing, right? Like, so that was cool. It was good to be a part of that. And then you just kind of made friends, and at the time, you would think that it's, these are friends that I'm just going to hang out with for this weekend or this, this month or this semester. Yeah. But then some of them are like lifelong friends. Like, when we started a new company, a realty company, one of the guys that we started with was, a guy that I met in high school, in college, right? So.
Okay, so the second part of the question is, what advice would you give to someone going through a similar thing right now where they are probably seen as a minority?
Yeah, I would say for anyone going through right now, if you're here and you're trying to kind of find your footing, I would say the biggest thing is just to immerse yourself into Grande Prairie. I wouldn't really worried about like, oh, I'm a minority. Like I think once you have that mentality in your head, everything that goes wrong, it's because I'm a minority, and I never like to lean on that reasoning. But I do think that if you're here, I think the biggest thing is immersing yourself in the community. If you stay home, you stay home, but your inputs equal your outputs, I guess. That's right. So if you're in the community, if you're at work, if you're hanging out with your friends and your coworkers, it's very easy now all of a sudden to start to do more things and be in more places where those opportunities can now find you.
So let me ask you a fun question. If I should call your best friend right now, what word would he use or she use to describe you?
I would say probably like stable.
That's a pretty interesting word.
Fun, like like there's. I mean, I don't know that there's maybe one word that could, because I'm a lot of different things, but I think I like to have fun. I like to be a part of something big. So I would say that, yeah, like just being around is, or reliable, I guess you could say.
Awesome.
I guess that was the one I was
Well,
saying.
hopefully, if they're seeing this video right now, hopefully they'll let you
You
know.
better s-
I hope they let you know if it's stable, fun, reliable, all the fun words that you just said.
Yeah.
But I asked that question because we're going to change the pace a little bit. We're going to switch it up a little bit, right? So for those of you guys who haven't heard earlier in the conversation, Taj is a real estate professional. But what are some of the jobs that you have done in the past, Taj, that no one knows about?
Well, if I could, I'm just trying to rack my brain on all the things that I've done since I've been here. But I was a safety supervisor in the oil field. When I first moved here, I sold shoes.
Okay.
I worked at Athletes World, and they've shut down now, but I was a shoe salesman at one point. Actually, but the most interesting one that most people don't know is this one. So I sold knives, so Cutco knives. I ended up being a door-to-door knife salesman for a few months.
Yeah.
So that was like my first kind of foray into like, outside sales. And it was funny because I didn't have a driver's license at the time, so I had to.
So you had to walk everywhere?
I just take the bus. Take the bus to my appointments, and so
It's a good thing Grande Prairie is not such a terrible big city.
The bus system's great in Grande Prairie, by the way.
Was it much different back then than
No, it was the same.
Okay.
Yeah, similar idea. But obviously now the city has grown, you have more routes and you have more stuff. But but that was one of the most interesting ones that I did.
Okay. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about your career, your job, which is you're a realtor. Now, how did that come about?
Actually, when I was in high school in Yellowknife, finishing my last year of high school, I actually worked at a Century 21 office up there. And it was, I was working in the file room, I think, for the summer and just like organizing files and paperwork. And I thought to myself, I'm like, this would be an awesome career path for me. Because I don't like static sedentary work. So like going to work every day at an office at a desk is, it's not really my vibe. I like to switch things up. And the real estate career every day looks different, right? Like, you could be, signing paperwork and meeting people one day, or you could be, taking photos of a listing another day, or you could be driving to an acreage, showing an acreage another day. So every day is different. But the one thing I like about it, or the most important thing I like about it is that it involves people. So I love people and I love learning their stories, learning about them, learning what makes them tick. And I think for me, like the people part of it is like the most, like the best part.
And how long have you been in the real estate industry?
Started in January of 2016, so just about 9 years.
Just about 9 years.
Yeah.
And over that period of time, what would you say is your biggest success story? Like probably, it could be anything. Whether, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just want to like guide you. Like it can be a family that you help, or it could be like personal gratification, whatever it could be.
I mean, there's a few of them. I think one of the biggest success stories is like, is trying to help, when a family is moving here and they don't really know the city, they don't really know the area. It's, the biggest success stories other than, you sell a lot of houses and all these things, but I think once you dial it down, I think, when you dial it down and you're like, okay, like these people don't know Grande Prairie.
Yeah.
They're trusting me with their information on how to move here. And then they end up finding a place, getting into it, and you follow up with them a year, 2 years, 3 years later. Either they become really good friends, like Denisha and Damien and some of the other ones we've had, or then they're like, years later, like, Taj, I love my house. Thank you so much. This is awesome. Like you could have that luster of buying a new house for the first year or so, but like when 2 or 3 years later comes down the line and they're like, no, we love it. We're head over heels over our place still. That's kind of, to me, one of the biggest things.
I can definitely see that, but there's no perfect industry.
No,
so now we're gonna say, what are the challenges?
I think one of the biggest challenges in real estate is just the uncertainty. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty in the housing market. There's a lot of uncertainty with interest rates in the banking market. We have a lot of competition. And when I say competition, I just mean there's in a small community like Grande Prairie, there's 270, 300, almost 300 realtors. So to navigate that space and to set yourself apart in that space can be challenging to a lot of people. And I think if you don't have a base of loyal clients to deal with, then it can be challenging. Yeah. They say that about 70% of agents in their first 2 years they withdraw from the industry because it's just that tough.
I can sympathize with you guys for sure. It's up and down. But Grande Prairie as a market, right? What is it like right now?
So our market is it's a seller's market right now. And I'll drill it down to like certain segments of the price, certain price points in the market. So, anything between 250,000 to 400,000, if it's on the market within 2 or 3 days, it should sell. So it's a seller's market for sure because our inventory levels are at an all-time low as well. When I started in 2016, we had probably about 600 or 700 homes on the market in total.
That's a lot.
Now there's about 120. So we have about 3 months of inventory kind of supply happening.
What do you think caused such a big drop?
A couple of things. I think over the years, back in 2016-17, we kind of were in a small depression. And I think at that point, the builders stopped building. So all the brand new, like the new home builders stopped building. And then I think there's been some changes in government. And then those changes in government introduced a lot of like energy efficiencies and taxes that caused the new build prices to jump up incrementally over the years. So, for example, a new build that costs you, $300,000 in 2014-15, and by 2017 or 18 is now $380 or $350, right? So it's pushed those prices up. And then when we had that small depression, folks stopped buying those new houses. So then those builders stopped building. And then obviously we had COVID and a couple other things, and now we're kind of just recovering from that. And so I think a lot of people are looking to buy. Interest rates went up, that happened too. So now people are looking to buy, but now because of those things that I just mentioned, now there's a lot less listings on the market for them to buy.
Okay.
So what I think is going to happen with that is that in the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to see more people list their homes, and it's kind of going to be a feeding frenzy. So
things are going to get a little bit busy pretty soon.
Yeah.
So is it a good time, in your opinion, of course, 6 or 7 months, is it a good time to buy a house at that point in time or sell your house?
I would say if somebody's in a position to buy sooner than that, they should, because in 6 or 7 months, those houses are going to be worth more, right? So now you're just paying more just because of time.
Gotcha.
Right? So I think that's going to happen. Again, I don't have a magical crystal ball, but anything can change from now till then. But we haven't had a boom here in about 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where things are looking.
So if someone is looking to buy a house, Taj, and they want to find a realtor, and they want to find a reliable realtor, what are some of the qualities they should be looking for?
You should be looking for somebody who knows the market, knows the city, and I think somebody who's able to understand the pain points of buying and selling. I've helped over 350 families buy and sell over the last 8 years. So being able to have that experience, I guess, is a big thing. And then I think, like the experience, what I was gonna say is like it's a stressful time for people when they're buying and selling. So I think having somebody that's able to manage that stress, I'm a pretty calm guy.
Yeah.
I can nothing really riles me very much. So I think having somebody to manage that stress is important as well, because you don't want your purchase experience to be an overwhelming. No.
Well,
you want it to
we're
be
gonna end it on that note. We're gonna say, Taj, thank you so much for taking the time out to come and be on our podcast.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
Let's Chat GP. We want to say we have learned so much throughout this episode. Like, we learned about Taj, we learned about Grande Prairie, and we also learned about the housing market in Grande Prairie. So I want to say, guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, keep talking GP.
Thanks for having me.